Uh, Good
Yeah,
afternoon.
please. Please start.
Myself Sharon Bhumi, an assistant professor of Travel and Tourism Department under School of Management Sciences. Today, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology is celebrating World Tourism Day 2021 associated with International Institute of Hotel Management. I feel pleasure to welcome our very own Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir Professor Dr. Shoikat Moitra, and all other eminent panelists and respected participants. In this year, UNWTO, United Nations World Tourism Organization, designated the theme of World Tourism Day 2021 is Tourism for Inclusive Growth. It aims to help people, mean stakeholders associated with the tourism sector in every possible way. Now I would like to hand over the session to my senior colleague, Professor J.P. Shaw, sir, Advisor, Travel and Tourism Department. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sunny. Well, it's really a great pleasure today that Macaut, in association with Sir Macaut, we call it SOT for our university, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology. We call it Macaut. So Macaut, in association with IIHM, we are celebrating this World Tourism Day today, and it's really a great pleasure that we have Dr. Suman Billa, the director of the UNWTO, director, and also we'll have his full introduction a little bit later. And now, with the permission of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, we would start this webinar. And may I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, to say a few words before we move on to Mr. Suman Billa, our keynote speaker, for his address.
Okay.
Please, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Shaw. Welcome to this digital platform. We are very happy to be associated with International Institute of Hotel Management to organize World Tourism Day 2021, where we are delighted to have Mr. Suman Billa from the UNWTO for sharing his wisdom and knowledge with all of our participants in this platform. The theme of World Tourism 2021 is Tourism for Inclusive Growth. And we also believe that we can work further, we can intensify our efforts to make tourism for inclusive growth of all the stakeholders associated with us, and also of the community, society, and the country. A few minutes before, I have come to know Dr. Suvarna Bose, the chief of International Institute of Hotel Management, conferred a Peace Award to 21 teachers from Afghanistan. It indicates that our stakeholders, they are leaving no stone unturned in making this tourism as inclusive growth, tourism as a way of motivation and inspiration amongst the larger section of masses across the world. Whether the world is normal, whether the world is new normal, whether the world is subnormal, it doesn't matter. Tourism is in the gene of human beings, because from the ancient times, in search of food, in search of water, human race migrated from one place to other. Here at India also, we have seen this migration of different human race in search of this livelihood, in search of food from other places to this country, to this land. And as a result, this country has assumed a dimension of greatness with assimilation of different cultures, different habits, and different thought process, different wisdom, different genetic diversity. And this is the reality of the effect or after effect of human migration. Now, as the world has become smaller, which was not there in medieval period or in ancient period, most of this arduous journey has to undertake either by foot or using animals. After this industrial revolution, now this migrational movement has become formidable. Let me narrate the story of Yuan Sang, who in search of knowledge traveled the thousands of miles from his native place at China to Taxila at eastern part of this country by foot only. And he had to cross desert, mountains, forest, and rivers, and in many, these difficult things in search of knowledge, to gather the knowledge, and then with all this accumulated knowledge, he came back again to his native place. And this was the story in ancient times, where many of these people, they for gathering knowledge, for knowing the world in a better way, they had to risk their lives. They had to use their passion to the best possible extent to do that. And for that purpose, knowledge was very, there's a limited option, and it was in the hand of a small section of people, particularly those belong to the elite classes. But after that Industrial Revolution, when the steam engine was invented, when aeroplane became a reality, then people could undertake journey from one place to another place easily. The consequence is education became widespread. Education from the hold of a limited section of people became a mass phenomena. And this emergence of universities at many places, migration of and movement of students in getting education from one country to another, that became formidable only maybe 100, 200 years before, after the first Industrial Revolution that happened. Now, these things, with the advancement of technology, with the advancement of these different mobilities, now our the formidability, our journey has become much more formidable from one place to another place. And now, previously people were scared of their safety, of their security, of their lives while traveling from one place to another. They had very limited option to enjoy the beauty of natures. Right now, we need not to take care of all these aspects. We can concentrate and focus only in absorbing the beauty of this of the surroundings of the nature. We can take up, we can witness, we can experience the cultures which are there at many places, and that can give us a rich insights. And with this rich insight, it improves our innovative faculties. And that is a reality. If we take up this journey from one place to another, if we enrich our faculty with all the inputs from different places, then definitely our productivity to contribute in a better way for the growth and development of the society, that increases. It is a scientifically established fact. And in this era of digital revolution, again, another facet has been added to these tourism sectors. There, this many virtual tourism, many scope of virtual tourisms, use of, these different internet-based services to make this tourism activity, traveling activity much easier, much comfortable, much formidable. That became a reality. Now, without, they spending many, spending many things, without spending, this lots of monies, and without spending lots of time, so we can take up journeys within shortest possible time. We can take up journey with minimal expenditure. That is one of the advantage of this technological advancement of the late. And that's why this theme of this year's World Tourism Day is very apt. This is this inclusive growth. That should be one of our motto. Because of pandemic situation, a temporary disruption has taken place. But I believe, and we believe, that whenever the situation will be assuming a normalcy, then there will be a rush of these travelers. There will be a rush of tourists from one place to another places, and that time we need to develop. By that time, we need to generate a numbers of professionals from different these sectors, different areas, who can take care of all these exponential growth of tourism in coming days. That will happen, and with this belief, with this conviction, let us work together for making this tourism these sustainable propositions for the growth and development of the society, for inclusive growth of different, these stakeholders of the society. And we are hopeful that in near future, through our persistent efforts in taking up many academic programs, many research activities in developing skilled manpowers to serve these particular sectors will be useful in contributing towards this mission. So let me conclude with this. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Subarna Bose, Mr. J.P. Shaw, Professor Indoil Mukherjee. I do not know whether he's there. Indoil Mukherjee is here physically. So Professor, who is the director of our management science, and all others from our universities and IIHM, all the stakeholders, the teachers, staff members, students, and above all, Mr. Suman Billa, whose presence will add a further level of inspiration to all the participants at this platform. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for your inaugural address. That was very nice. In fact, sir himself has been a very avid traveler, and he has visited many countries, not only the length and breadth of our own India, but many other countries he has visited, and he is very familiar with the different facets of tourism in different parts of the world. Thank you so much, sir. And now, as sir was rightly saying, in fact, I would say that travel is also like an endless university. It's one never stops learning, and exploration is the essence of the human spirit, as you rightly said, sir. So now a little bit about before Mr. Billa takes over, a little bit of about him for the benefit of the participants and all of us. Mr. Suman Billa is the Kerala Cadre IS officer of 1996 batch. He had been in different posts there in Kerala and also in the central government. He happened to be the Secretary Tourism and also Secretary Civil Supplies in the Kerala government and many other departments of government of Kerala. And then later on, he was as Joint Secretary in the Government of India Ministry of Tourism, where he was instrumental in, Swadesh Darshan scheme for the developing thematic circuits, and also the India Tourism Mart, and also in developing the launching of the Incredible India version 2. So he had been very instrumental. And then as far as Kerala itself is concerned, there also he was very instrumental in, I think he was responsible for tourism initiation and also global model, which won the UNWTO's Ulysses Award for innovation in public policy governance in the government of Kerala. That was on monsoon tourism, sir. So, and right now he is in UNWTO Madrid as Director Technical Cooperation and Silk Road Development. So now we would request, he had been, of course, his alumni of Madras Christian College and Jawaharlal Nehru University, and further into London School of Economics. Now we would request, we were very happy that he is here with us, and who else would have been better than him to let us know on this World Tourism Day or celebrations about the theme, the tourism for the economic growth, and also the different activities that the different parts of the world is taking up now post-pandemic. How the situation is, how the different countries are gearing up, including India, to receive the tourists, the different frontier formalities, etc. So I'm sure sir is very, very familiar about all these things, and I would request now, sir, to take over the stage, and the floor is yours, sir, and we are all keen to listen to you about the different developments in the tourism post-pandemic and the initiation and initiatives being taken by UNWTO. Thank you, sir, and please, Dr. Suman Billa, please. Sir,
sir, please unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw, for those kind words of introduction. I'm indeed delighted to be here, and I would like to wish all the participants on the occasion of the World Tourism Day. As you know, at the UNWTO today is a busy day for us. I've been up since the morning, and for the Far East, we've been doing some events pertaining to the World Tourism Day. But I'm especially happy to be amongst friends and to be speaking to participants from India on this occasion. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Saikat Maitra has already given us a little bit of background on where we are and how tourism is and how the backdrop of the pandemic will play itself out. And I'm sure that my colleagues, Dr. Subarna Bose and Professor Mukherjee and Mr. J.P. Shaw will also add on to what I would have to say. So let me try and explore the theme a little bit about what the theme for this year is, and then I will speak a little bit about where we are as India and what we should be doing and what we need to do to get ahead of the rest of the pack. So the theme for the World Tourism Day this year is tourism for inclusive growth. And I think this is perhaps the most vital and the core element of tourism development all across the world. And this is perhaps the most important element that India should keep in mind when we develop our tourism sector. And I will explain why inclusivity in tourism development is very, very critical for us. Traditionally, economists have always understood the well-being, the economy of a society in terms of two primary concepts. The first was growth, and the second was redistribution. So essentially, when they spoke about growth, the underlying impact and understanding was that there are certain sections of the population who are creating growth, and in redistribution, you have to take the surplus that this growth is generating and take it to and give it to other parts of the population who are not part of the growth cycle. For example, one way to understand in the 50s and the 60s paradigm is that the industrial sector was supposed to be creating growth and generating a surplus, and that had to be transferred, and through means of the state, that had to be made available to people who are not part of it, like the agrarian sector and the traditional segments of the economy. Now, one of the elements that has come about in between was called inclusive growth. So essentially what inclusive growth means is that you can grow. There are certain sectors of the economy which will grow by themselves because of the inherent strength they have. And there will be certain segments which are perhaps not part of that growth story. But the most important thing is there is a way by which we can interlink these segments of the society which are not part of the growth story into it, so that we can put them onto the bandwagon, so that we create a holistic level of development, and we are able to support all the sections of the population, not by way of dole or largesse or redistribution, but we are able to support those populations in terms of how we are able to create avenues for them to grow and be part of the growth story. And there is no better vehicle in this world than tourism to be a vehicle for inclusive growth. So the reason why tourism matters is that just from the size of the exports that we see, tourism today accounts for 1.7 trillion USD in terms of international exports. And that is 7% of the global exports and 29% of the world's service exports itself. But more importantly, and I think very critically, tourism is responsible for 1 out of 10 jobs globally. And the World Travel and Tourism Council has recently come up with a study a couple of years ago, where they have said that 1 out of every 4 new jobs in the world are being created by the tourism sector. So essentially what this means is, just to hark back to what the Vice Chancellor had said a little bit about, the explosion of the jobs that would be created and how we need manpower. I think it's very, very critical for us to create the personnel and the manpower that are necessary for us to drive this growth momentum forward. But I think the most important reason why tourism is important from an inclusive growth perspective is because it can create jobs to a diverse workforce. Because tourism is not just about a hotelier and the tourist. It has to also spread its influence across the place where it is done. So essentially, it should also support the community within which that establishment rests. And the interaction should be such that the tourist should also be enriched by his interaction with the local population, just as much as the local population is enriched in interacting with the tourist. So it has to be social, it has to be positive. So when we speak about diverse workforce, what it means is that it is not just those who have done their masters in hospitality management who are getting jobs. It is not just those who have passed out of Foodcraft institutes who are being supported within the tourism establishment. Essentially what it means is today in tourism, we have several retirees who are working as tour guides. You have several housewives who part-time and who work in restaurants to create some, some very homely but very special localized cuisine in hotels. You have students who work extensively in the tourism sector to shore up their, their resources and to, make ends meet. So essentially what tourism does is that not only does it create linear jobs for those who are well structured and who have come through a university system or through a proper education system, but the tourism can also create jobs for people who are who can part-time, who are looking for some kind of a support, or who are looking for, as in the case of the retirees or the housewives, just some way of engagement with the broader society. So I think essentially this diverse workforce that tourism supports is really the key. So in several of the responsible tourism projects that we have, if I take the example of Kumaragam in the state of Kerala, which was one of the first responsible tourism projects in India, for which we have won the Ulysses Award of the UNWTO. So what it means is that it is essentially a village. So there are hotels and there are resorts there, and they provide jobs which are direct. But the local community is also supported because the destination is able to showcase what is local to the global, which is essentially the tourists who are coming. So you have
Please, sir, continue, sir.
Yeah. So you have several, avenues of livelihoods which are opened up. Essentially, the farmers which are there have moved towards organic farming. Now, what this means is that not only do tourists get an opportunity to go and see what the farming techniques are and spend a day on the farm, but also that the produce that is being produced goes back into the hotels and the resorts. So the tourists are getting food that is 0 food miles, that is organic, that is grown without fertilizers and pesticides. So essentially, it's a good package. The second is that you have things like toddy tappers who take tourists, on a tour, and then they show them what their craft of, how they, tap the toddy, and then, it's an educative tour which is done. There are fishermen who take them to show their traditional, ways of fishing. So essentially what this means is that we are showcasing what is essentially local to a global audience. And we are creating a very positive cycle in which all of these people are also being benefited because of, tourism reaching out to that place. And therefore, we are creating much stronger sustenance within the society for tourism to survive, because they have a lot more stakeholders than just the hotelier or, the few people who work, within the hotels. So this is something that we need to look at. And this is also a great opportunity for us to see as to how we can promote the local arts and crafts. You can have, souvenirs which can be prepared out of local art forms with local craftsmen can do. You can have, art forms which are typically local. It can be song, it can be dance, whatever is the traditional folk art forms, which can again be showcased to the tourists within the resorts, within the hotels, as a form of entertainment and provide sustenance to these art forms. So essentially tourism is by its very nature inclusive. So the idea that we need to get into our minds is that we have to, everything that we do in tourism, this principle of inclusiveness has to permeate around it. And we just need to keep our eyes open, because essentially, especially in the post-COVID world, the world is moving away more and more towards a more authentic, more genuine, and more responsible experiences. So I think mass tourism, as we know, in the years past is more or less over. So essentially, I think we will be looking at places where consumers are going to be more choosy. People are going to look at experiences which genuinely ring a bell with them. So I think we need to move towards that trajectory, and we need to see as to how we can develop tourism experiences that are authentic and that are unique. So the United Nations has as all of you know, it has a 2030 agenda for sustainable development, which is essentially 20 goals for sustainable development goals, which have been set up. And the overarching theme of that is to leave no one behind. that essentially means that as the world grows and develops and moves out to greater prosperity, we need to ensure that nobody in this world is left behind from that development paradigm that we are looking at. And tourism directly supports 4 sustainable development goals. The first goal is no poverty. Goal number 5 is gender equality. Goal number 8 is decent work and economic growth. And goal number 10 is to reduce inequalities. And I think one of the most critical things that tourism also does very effectively is to create is to support the agenda of gender equality, because no other sector creates as many jobs as women as the tourism sector. And even though we find that at the managerial level, the preponderance of women is not so high, we generally find that at the staff level, women are represented far higher than any other sector that there is. And the second element that tourism also supports is it can support youth in a big way. So we need to, from where we are, and I think this is generally the background on how we need to look at inclusiveness. And I think we need to see as to how we can reimagine this from a COVID-19 perspective. Because today, the world is not what it was before the pandemic. The world is not what it was 2 years ago. A lot has changed, and a lot of it has irrevocably changed. And I think tourism sector has perhaps changed than most of the other sectors that we have seen. So we need to reimagine this entire context. So some of the things that we see that COVID has done is, of course, that it's created unprecedented disruption to the tourism sector, as it were. Because in 2020, the international tourist arrivals dropped by 74%. And in 2021, up until the end of May, we are looking at an 85% drop in international tourist arrivals, but the world is slowly, sort of getting back. In terms of international tourist exports, we have got $1.3 trillion less of exports. And in terms of jobs, it's 100 to 120 million jobs that have been lost worldwide from the tourism sector. So essentially what this means is that the impact is there, and we have all understood and we all realize that the impact of COVID-19 is perhaps unprecedented, and we'll probably never see something like this again. But the important thing for us to know is that it has changed consumer preferences quite a lot, on the 2 fronts. The first is that as the element of security and hygiene and safety that people look for, that has redefined the way that people travel and how travel itself is offered. And the second is that people are looking more and more towards genuine, authentic experiences, because the high volume, low profit mass tourism market, as we know, for people going to beaches and sort of getting drunk, I think some of those elements are actually under pressure. So the governments all across the world are also trying to create avenues and create their tourism sectors in such a way that they cater to the new emerging trends that are happening in tourism. So when will tourism come back is something that that nobody has a clear idea of. But from what we see so far, the trend is rather optimistic, because we have seen in Europe, where vaccinations have happened apace, there is a battle that is going on between rapid vaccination, which is shoring up the population's resistance, but we also see the COVID virus rapidly transmuting itself and emerging into variants of concern. So the Delta variant is something that has ravaged India, and that sort of continues to be there. There are 2-3 other variants of concern that are there. But from what we see is, I think the most plausible outcome is going to be a model like the Singapore model, where the virus is not going to go away. It will continue to be there. But however, with vaccination, we will be able to control the loss of life and the level of hospitalization. So we will need to fall back upon a Singapore model, where they say that the virus is not going to go anywhere, but we will need to take, through precautionary measures and through vaccination, we will have to control it in a manner that it does not impact upon the economic activities of the country. So essentially, we are going to be looking at a new COVID normal that will perhaps be the norm. Now, this has one big outcome that this has is that it's going to make a continuous upgradation of the vaccine, and regular administering is very important. So essentially what this means is that the industrial West and the developed countries are going to be ahead of the curve in vaccination, and the poor countries are going to be, behind. Now, the most important thing from an economic paradigm point of view is that countries which are going to be slow in vaccination are also going to suffer tremendously in terms of economic development, because if your population is vaccinated, you can take your economic engine back to near optimum levels. But however, if you are not vaccinated and you still have to go through lockdowns and you still have to keep people away from work, you are going to be in a situation where your economic output is going to be less than optimal. So essentially, when COVID started, everybody was under the impression that that it will set the level playing field, and then everybody will have a chance to bounce back after the end of it. But that hope is belied now. So essentially what it looks like is that the developed West is perhaps going to get a head start over the countries which are poorer. And that is something that is a big cause for concern. If you look at the Israeli model, they had initially purchased the Pfizer vaccine at a very high cost. So when Benjamin Netanyahu, who was their prime minister then, was questioned, he said the cost of the vaccine is very small compared to the loss of productivity if the economic engine does not run. And essentially, that is how the world is viewing it. India is also doing well. I understand that we're already up at the 80 crore mark, and then we need to move a little bit more to the 50s. So towards the end of this year, I think we will be fully vaccinated. The other thing that we also see, trend that we also see, which is again a direct impact of this, is that travel groupings are forming. One way to understand this is the EU Green Pass. So essentially what the Green Pass means is that if, these are countries who are banding together, who have got similar, rates of vaccination and similar experience in terms of having controlled the pandemic. And then they're creating these travel groupings within themselves so that people from one country are able to travel freely to the other. The European Union is doing it well. They're also talking to the US and Canada. They're talking to Australia and New Zealand. So essentially you will have some parts of the world which will fully open up for travel. So their tourism sectors will pick up earlier than perhaps countries which are slow on the vaccination curve. So that is one thing again that we need to be looking at. And I think for India, we have we can expect a little bit of a delayed start because we've had the second wave. And even though we've done extremely well in the way that we have handled the pandemic, there is always this element of, mental image that it creates in the minds of people. So that's going to take a little bit of time to come on. But I think for India, the game plan is going to be domestic because as most of us know, we receive 11 million tourists, but we send out 25 million Indians abroad every year who cumulatively spend $26 billion when they are abroad. So that is the kind of purchasing power that there is within the country. And if we have to make sure that the tourism sector is able to negotiate, this pandemic with the least amount of damage, we will have to tap into this critical purchasing power and see as to how to make domestic tourism work for us. This is, in fact, India is extremely fortunate to have a very strong domestic market. There are several countries in our neighborhood like Maldives, who 75 to 80% of their tourists come from abroad. And when that tap turns down, there is really no way for their tourism sector to survive. So I think at least in that sense, India is very well placed. So few things that I think India has done and few things that India should do. India is growing, very fast. We're one of the fastest growing destinations for a large country, but we're growing on a very, very narrow base. We're growing on a base of about 11 million international travelers. And I think that is something that we need to do. We need to improve. Because one way to understand is like a state like Dubai, which is no more than a city, attracts 13 million. And then we attract 11 million. I think it shows a lot about how much potential there is and how much of it we've used. Some of the most important things that have been done in the recent years for tourism to kickstart is India has started a e-visa program, which is, amongst the greatest models in the world. No other country in the world has opened up to so many countries in as short a time as India has. And it's a truly, an enabler for people to get apply for it electronically and be able to get your visa within 48 hours, or in any case within 72 hours is a great enabler. The second thing that is going strongly in India's favor is the spend on infrastructure. India builds 30 kilometers of national highway every single day. And that's the kind of road work that we are adding. And there's a lot of infrastructure that is also happening in terms of metros, in terms of railways, in terms of aviation. We're growing. We're one of the fastest growing aviation sectors in the world. Some of our airports are, coming up every day, and we have cases of, even in small places like Darbhanga, where they've started flights last year, and they're now operating 11 flights every single day. So I think there is a lot to be said about infrastructure and about how people are taking it up. We had also done one of the strong things that India also has. We have a very strong tagline, Incredible India. And one of the Incredible India version 2 is something that has, struck a chord. But we need to move beyond version 2, because the way that we attract tourists post-COVID is going to be fundamentally different from the way we attracted tourists in the pre-COVID period. So essentially, you need to have very targeted, very focused campaigns, which are hyper-local, hyper-aggressive to target the person. So I think digital will be the most important player as we go forward. And we will have to also do tracking of the tourists to be able to target them better. So I think that's perhaps going to be the future, and that is how I think we need to enable ourselves. The fourth element that is again very important for India is Swachhata. And whatever else we may say, there is just no getting around it unless we are able to improve our standards of hygiene and cleanliness, because tourist expectation is going to be much higher than what a local population expects. And that is something that we will have to fix. And one of the biggest things that we have done is to acknowledge it and start working on it. So I think at least the tourism destinations, we need to have a way in which we maintain those rigorous standards which are acceptable to an international traveler. One of the, again, big things that we have done, which goes very strongly in favor of tourism in the past few years, is skill development. Because as all of us know, we have a huge pool of talent out there which is looking for jobs. And we also have an industry which is very hungry for talent. So what we need to do is to really build a bridge between, this set of people and with the industry. And the bridge can only be built by developing their skill sets and to enable them to work in the hospitality sector. So I think that is one of the big initiatives. That is where some work has been done, but I think a lot more needs to be done to take that forward. And I think in terms of things that we need to do, first, I think we need to change our attitude towards tourism. And that's not really from the point of view of the people, but also from a political perspective and from the perspective of key decision makers. Because even today, tourism is considered as a luxury activity, which is taxed highly, which is almost taxed at the same levels as sin goods, which could be, which are detrimental to society. Now we need to first understand and clear our minds that tourism can indeed be a very, very powerful tool for economic growth and development for a society and for a country like India. So I think the first thing that the governments especially need to understand is that we need to take an entrepreneurial position on tourism. It is as simple as that. If you want greater wealth, greater prosperity to come, you need to approach tourism from an entrepreneurial perspective. How do you attract investments? How do you make sure that they work? How do you keep your tax levels low? How do you retain your competitiveness in a global marketplace? And how do you improve your product and your destination? These are things that we need to sort of look at it. And the states which have done so, like states like Kerala, states like Goa, to some extent states like Rajasthan, are already reaping the benefits of taking that position. But I think that needs to go through, that needs to be accepted widely across all the states. And for that to happen, first the states need to understand as to what that tourism can do for them in terms of jobs, in terms of GDP, and then take that position of being aggressive towards it. The second element that we also need to do is we have to change the profile of tourists who are coming to India. So currently, if you look at the profile, we get 11 million because we are essentially focusing, we are targeting, or we are getting tourists at two ends of the spectrum. You're either getting the luxury segment, and India does extremely well on luxury. So people who stay in 5-star hotels, go around in chauffeur-driven cars, who have this bubble concept of tourism, or you get a lot of backpackers who are really not adding so much to the economy as they are, taking away from it. The most important, group of tourists you will realize all across the world is the $100 per night tourists. Those are, people who are the middle class people who have, people who travel around when they go with their family for a holiday. They choose a clean 3-star or a 4-star hotel, which is around $100 or $120 per night. Now, if you look at India, our position in that mid-market is extremely weak. Not only are we not getting them, and one of the reasons why we're not able to do well is because of our urban planning. So essentially, when you create these urban planning maps, you need to understand that when tourists come to a place, it may be on work, it may be on business, they also need to stay close to the center. You cannot expect them to stay outside the town and sort of come into the town to visit. So essentially, land will have to be reserved for setting up hotels. The second thing that you need to do is wherever there is land that is set up, you cannot only bid it from the perspective of whoever pays the highest will get it. When you do that, you will only get a 5-star hotel or a 5-star hotel 5-star deluxe, because they are the ones who will be able to pay the highest dollar for that plot of land. But what we need to do is to clearly earmark. You can have one 5-star hotel, but you also need to have a 3-star hotel there to cater to the other segments of the population. Now, that is something as part of urban planning that needs to be done both at the Government of India's level and at the state government's level, to create this chain of hotels which are about $100 per night. And most of the hotels that are there in India, like the Red Fox and Lemon Tree, who have started, have not really become as successful as they ought to have when you compare it with China, because China has, Lemon Tree alone they have done a study on how the Chinese market has treated them and how the Indian market has done. And in 3 years, 680 hotels have been added within the $100 bracket, and in India, less than 20. So I think that is a number that we need to look at and see how we need to do. The third element that we also need to do is to see as to how we can upgrade our common infrastructure. Because when people who live in this $100 per night go and stay, they're going to be using the metro train that all of us use. They're going to be using the local bus system. So essentially, we need to create an ecosystem where the common infrastructure is welcoming of tourists. And of course, lastly, I think sustainability and responsibility are key, because whatever it is that we do, we need to have that at the back of our minds, that we need to be responsible towards the communities, we need to be responsible towards the environment. So essentially, it drills down into three things: the environmental responsibility, economic responsibility, and social responsibility. And we need to make sure that we address all of the three of them in everything that we do. So one of the key messages that the Secretary General of the United Nations has given is Build Back Better. Because essentially, as we bounce out of COVID, we need to create a world that is more equitable. We need to create a tourism sector that is more sustainable. So therefore, we need to build back better. And I think that is something that we will have to, if we have to do that, we will have to keep in mind the key elements of sustainability and how the community is involved and how environmentally responsible we are and how good our safety and hygiene practices are going to be. And therefore, I think there's a big challenge ahead of all of us in the tourism sector, because as we claw ourselves back out of the pandemic, we need to see as to how we can create a better world and a better tourism sector for ourselves. And therefore, the theme for this year's World Tourism Day could not have been more appropriate in the current context. I wish you all a happy World Tourism Day, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. And that was really very nice. You gave us a very in-depth information on the current scenario and of the entire world, how this pandemic thing has affected people both economically and socially, and how this theme of this year, inclusive tourism for inclusive growth, is going to help because tourism is starting now. It has restarted, and this thing is a good move, and that is, I'm sure, that will help, and we have to see that nobody is left behind. Everybody gets the benefits of tourism percolates to all walks of life and to all stakeholders. Now, may I request Dr. Subarna Bose, the founder of IndiSmart Group, to highlight about West Bengal and what is happening here, what things have taken place post-pandemic, and his perspective, and the what he feels, how the students from tourism and hospitality should take up there. I find that most of the students presently, they are a bit in a jinx, like thinking that whether they should take up travel tourism as a course itself, because giving the example of our university, we are having a lot of admissions in the hospital administration and hospital management, but the comparison, if you do it with the hospitality and tourism, the number is less, slightly increasing, but not the same as hospital administration. People are thinking that hospital management and hospital administration, they'll be getting jobs, etc. So this scenario is a little bit like that. But maybe Dr. Subarna Bose would like to highlight a bit on it. Dr. Subarna Bose, please.
Very good evening to all the people listening. And after Mr. Billa said, I don't think we have got anything much to say, because he is so articulate and he touched almost everything that we all wanted to say. So I think he has been absolutely fantastic presentation. He touched everything, right from the global perspective to the local commune and to the great example of the best practices at Kerala. And I think that is exactly what I also feel about inclusivity, because I think this is a theme that could not have come at a better time than this. I think inclusivity is what was required before, but today, as we are still coming out of the ashes, rising out of the ashes of the COVID-19 pandemic heat, and I think the tourism, travel, and hospitality industry has been the most hit industry in the world from the world point of view, and we all know that this is one industry that is first hit and the last to recover. Build back better, fantastic. I mean, we all know that this is the way forward, build back better, and we need to really go for it. As far as inclusivity is concerned, I think this is a time when we need to really understand that tourism is everybody's business. Tourism is not limited to the exclusive travel people in the trade, hospitality, owners, hotel guys. No, everyone is a stakeholder. The person who is supplying refrigerator in a hotel, the supplier of the food. Mr. Billa mentioned about a fantastic example of the local ladies cooking the regional cuisine for hotels. I think everyone is a stakeholder. It's so inclusive in that. I think it's one industry that transcends all the boundaries, whether it's a political boundary, religious, social, economic. I think this is the time when we really realize that to get the tourism back on the rails, we really need to work very hard, especially in the Indian context. International travel is very slow, but then good news is that the domestic travel is picking up, and it's picked up quite aggressively. I've been traveling at least 3 days, 4 days in a week now. And believe me, I mean, it's not just Goa, but everywhere I go, it's 80% the flights are full. And last Sunday, Last Sunday before I was traveling from Delhi to Calcutta on a Sunday morning, 9 a.m. flight to Calcutta, and it was full. I was very happy. People are not coming to Calcutta for leisure or pleasure. People are coming there for business. And these are the key indicators that things are started to move. It's still a long way to go, possibly. Hotel industry, F&B is doing very well. In fact, I'll say the industry statistics says that the F&B on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, are doing better than the pre-COVID times. It's something called revenge tourism, people are telling, but the people are coming out and eating food. They have got a little, they really want to spend the money. The domestic travel has picked up. We have got a resort in Goa, and I can tell that we are charging, I think, 3 times on the weekends, and people are still coming. The general ARR been on the lower side. The hotel are getting full, but generally ARR in the business hotels are low. So obviously, these are the things that industry have to adjust for some time. I think things have to come to some kind of normalcy, possibly another 8 months or so. Looking at maybe optimistically at April 2022 for the things to get normal, when some of the international destination travel will open, more flights will open, and business travel have to open. You must have seen that TCS has already asked their employees to work from office. And I'm sure that once TCS, which is India's largest IT company and I think second largest in the world right now, has asked their employee to come and work from office, I'm sure others will follow suit. So the more people start working from office, this would be a great indicator for other industry also to follow. People will start coming and working. Of course, I must say that we have to be very cautious about it. Vaccination will definitely be the key factor, and unless we vaccine everyone who is 18, at least 18 years, every Indian 18 year and up double jab, I think we are still not going to be enough. We have to get everyone vaccinated up to 18 years, and then of course the school children. Key indicators for the hospitality industry has been absolutely fantastic. You see Zomato's IPO. I mean, never really believe. I mean, I'm happy that I put in some money, and 65 times oversubscribed. No one could believe it for a company for last 10 years on losses. The public sentiment is still very buoyant. Otherwise, the general public, the investing public, would not put their hard-earned money into a food aggregator to that extent. Look at Barbecue Nation, oversubscribed. 2 weeks back, Bill Gates gave a funding of 770 crore to Ritesh Agarwal of Oyo. 1 month back, Accor gave about 170 crore to Siddharth of Tribo. This means that people are investing in our industry. They would not have invested in a lame duck industry. Fund managers are very clever people. So I think things are getting and looking much positive from an economic point of view. But obviously, it will take some time for things, as Mr. Billa very nicely said, to come back on the rails. The international travel and the vaccine in the other countries would be the very important. It's not just about vaccination in one country or 2 countries. It's vaccination in the world over. That would hold the key for the international travel to start. And I think it's very important. Mr. Shaw asked me about the courses. I think the students actually are coming for hospitality tourism. I don't think last year was a little slow, but as far as IIHM, we have got 10 campuses in India, and I can see that it's just going up this year. So I can't see any fall in the numbers. There has been a lot of recruitment this year, which was not there last year. Recruitment not just in hospitality, but also in retail, in fashion, in related industry. A lot of recruitments. So things are getting better, and I'll just end by repeating Mr. Billa said, build back better. I think that should be the mantra for all of us to survive and thrive. Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bose. You're right, absolutely. Actually, we had an enemy who we were not able to see, but then we had to fight him, when the only alternative was the vaccination. And as Dr. Birla rightly pointed out, that vaccine is the only solution most of the countries have taken up. And those who have, the winners will be those who have taken up this more seriously, and those who have got the entire country population vaccinated. And those who are slow, the poorer nations or whatever it is, so they will be lagging behind. So it's time that most of the countries, whoever are dependent on tourism, look into that very seriously. And as sir rightly pointed out, tourism is a very, very important sector. As he gave some statistics, 1 out of every 4 jobs is being created by tourism. So that's the area where, there is the opportunities galore is there in the tourism and travel sector. Having said that, I would like to say that we have Dr. Indranil Mukherjee, the director of School of Management Science of our university. He is joined. So may I request Professor Indranil Mukherjee to say a few words. After that, we can take up the question answer, sir. Professor Indranil Mukherjee, sir, please.
Sir, please unmute, sir. Indranil, sir.
Thank you, Professor Shaw, for inviting me, and we have been watching and listening with rapt attention to what Mr. Suman Birla was saying. Thank you, sir, for joining this program in spite of your busy schedule. And may I also take this opportunity to thank our very good friend and our strong collaborator, Dr. Subarna Bose, for organizing this program, and Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology, West Bengal, under the stewardship of our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Shoikat Moitro, has been reaching out in many different ways. And as a university, we are slightly different from the other conventional universities in the sense that we are not only focusing on teaching, learning, but on all aspects of academics, namely teaching, training, research, consultancy, societal outreach in a very big way, so that the university, which is the premier technological university of the state of West Bengal, can fulfill its responsibilities to the people. And in this endeavor, my very special thanks, our heartfelt gratitude to Mr. Suman Birla for spending so much time with us on the occasion of the World Tourism Day. And once again, very special thanks to Dr. Bose, who has been with us always with this university in many different endeavors that we wish to undertake. Also, I would like to thank on behalf of the School of Management Sciences, my senior colleague and friend, Professor J.P. Shaw, who is a senior advisor in the Department of Travel and Tourism. Also, he is the director of EXA Incubation Center, which is the Technology Business Incubation Center of our university. Thank you, Professor Shaw, for steering through this program in such a professional and in such a successful way. Of course, we would like to have many such programs in future, and as Dr. Bose pointed out, that the travel and tourism sector is on a rebound, and he pointed out, he gave several examples, as did Mr. Suman Birla, that we are sure that with increased vaccination and other measures that the government is deploying, we will be able to return to normalcy. Of course, that would take time. We would go through different phases and cycles, but it's probably just a matter of time before we are able to emerge out of this dark tunnel to which we have been plunged with the sudden onset of COVID-19. So with these words and with a very big thanks to all the honorable speakers who are here, particularly Mr. Suman Birla, may I hand back to my senior colleague, Professor J.P. Shaw, to continue this program. Professor Shaw.
Thank you, Professor Mukherjee. That was very nice of you. I'm giving the vote of thanks to our all panelists here. Well, a couple of things which Dr. Birla told us, and for all the participants also, and for the entire travel trade fraternity, that we need to look into, we need to focus as far as our country is concerned, the genuineness of the products. what we are showing, I mean, showing local to global travelers. That was a very nice statement we said, because that is what they are coming to see here. They are not, I mean, as far as India is concerned, I don't think they're coming to see a big mall here or a tall building or a skyscraper here. What they're coming here for is for the local, local art and craft. He was mentioning about art and craft, the folk arts. I had seen in that Rajasthan during my posting in Jaipur several years back, evening time in all the hotels, you used to have very nice cultural performances, Kalbelia dance and other types of dances. And we would find even the foreign travelers participating in that particular event, that would make the whole thing so lively. These are certain things, and the lifestyle and the livelihood and the day-to-day living standards of these people also, whether they are in folk arts or selling certain souvenirs, etc., their standard of living also improved because of this tourism thing. So we really need to see that we have more authentic, more genuine experiences for our travelers. I assure you, sir, I think we are all into it, and the travel fraternity here, they are all into it, trying to put up their best to see that our international travelers do get the genuine experience here. Now, there are not many questions I am finding. If you kindly permit, Dr. Birla, then we can have a few questions, sir, in case. I'll just see some questions are here. One of them, Mr. Sambhu Kumar, says that why celebrate World Tourism Day? Well, Mr. Kumar, I think this World Tourism Day we celebrate mainly for promoting tourism and to see that and its impact on our society. Sorry, sir, if you want to add something, this is what I thought of saying. Basically, it is for promotion of tourism. Maybe a few words from Dr. Birla on this, why we are celebrating World Tourism Day, sir.
Sure. World Tourism Day is essentially a day to mark the sector. And this was the day on which the statutes of the UNWTO were adopted in the year 1970. So that does not have a wider significance to the tourism sector at large. But the reason why we choose the World Tourism Day is because it is an opportunity for all of us to commemorate the contribution of a sector, to look at where we are, to do some soul searching on how the sector is evolving and what it is that we need to do. And I think that is ably supported by the themes that we have. For example, this year we have inclusive tourism as our theme. We've had in the past jobs and tourism. We've had sustainability and tourism. So essentially, it's a good time for us to take stock of where the tourism sector is, where we are going, and then look at it from a focused perspective of what are the key themes that we need to be developing and promoting in the tourism sector, and if we are doing that well. So it's a kind of a stock taking, and I think it's very useful for a global discourse to emanate on tourism.
Thank you, sir. There's another. They are saying, Mr. Sachin Dev Mandal, can you please tell me from when we can get tourist visa? Okay. Mr. Mandal, it all depends. You are applying for visa for which country? Some of the countries have started opening out. You have to apply it through VFS. Some of the countries have opened out, so the procedure has to be followed. Not all countries have opened for tourist visa now, but gradually things will be opening out. Another question is here, any e-certificate is given to us? Yes, we are going to provide certificate to all the participants because there will be a link. After giving your comments on that, the e-certificate will be made to you on your email ID that you have registered with. Again, Mr. Mandal, Sachin Dev Mandal, he's saying, my name is Sachin Dev Mandal. My question is, can you please tell me from when we get tourist visa? Well, I've already told you, these decisions are to be taken, Mr. Mandal, by the respective countries, by the respective consulates and the missions of different countries. May I request Dr. Suman Birla to add a few words on this, sir? If you
which question?
Question, it was saying that from when are we going to get tourist visa? By Mr. Mandal is saying. Can you please tell me from when we get tourist visa?
Okay.
This is the question, sir.
So I think, we're in a relatively good position there. And, there was a little bit of a slowdown because of our second wave, but several countries have started issuing the visa now. For example, Spain is issuing visa for Indians who want to visit Spain. We know that UK, we had some problem regarding the recognition of vaccination, but that has been cleared. I understand that Covaxin is also going to be cleared next month by the EU. So if that is going to be the situation, I think starting from now up until the end of the year, we're going to have more and more countries open up. US has already opened up. There are some countries like Canada which are still holding on. But I think for tourists to go out, starting now and by the end of this year, I think it will mostly normalize. And for those who are looking for inbound travel, we think that by early next year, by January or February next year, inbound into India will start picking up. And I think by the middle of the year, we should have robust flows.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think, Mr. Mandal, you have got the answer for that. We have a question from Ranjita Saw. She says, even though travel domestically has started, but what could possibly be the reason of it not being promoted enough? We only see a few tourism boards and Incredible India promoting. Sir, would you like to answer this question?
No, all across the world, we find that it's a catch-22 situation for destinations to promote, because they are trying to see if the money is bang for the buck. Because if you put the money and you promote yourself, there are two things. One is you should be able to create and give an experience that is safe and that is something that is good. The second is you should also be able to attract tourists. So it's a kind of a chicken and egg situation, because honestly, several states at this point of time are not in a mindset where they want to invite large number of tourists coming in because of their own health and security issues. There are different dynamics playing out in terms of lockdowns, in terms of sero surveys, etc. So states, I think, are not yet completely come to a stage where they're going to throw open their doors. So it's a little bit of they're doing it slowly. How to support their tourism sector, but also make sure that their health situation in the state does not get adversely impacted by this big number of tourists. And the second dynamic, as I've said, is all destinations in the world are now in this catch-22. Is this the right time for us to go and promote and put money into advertising? Or is it money down the drain, and is it better to wait till the market consolidates a little bit more? So, but my sense is that as we go forward, we will see in India, at least for domestic tourism, I think you will see a lot of a push that will come forward as we go ahead, as vaccination picks up.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think, Ranjita, you got the answer on that one. Last question here is, it says, how MICE tourism help tourism industry? The question is by Atri. Atri, MICE, is meeting incentives, conference and exhibitions. This is part of tourism, it's niche tourism, we call it. So, these are also, like whenever you have meetings or incentives that is given to the employees of different organizations and conferences, etc. That is a way of, promoting the tourism industry and the benefit of the tourism industry. Sir, would you like to add something more on this MICE tourism?
Sir, actually want to ask another question. How can tourism provide job facilities, as I'm a student of second year from tourism department? We the students during this pandemic are very much worried about it. I think she just want to know the future prospects of tourism, their career, their everything, I guess. Maybe, sir, you or Mr. Villa, anyone can please.
Sir, would you like to say something on this? I think that, sir, would be more appropriate for these students.
So I think, it is a difficult time, not just for businesses, it's been very difficult for students as well, because we've moved to, home, study from home format. There are also no industrial attachments and trainings for you to get the practical experience. Internships have been affected other than those which are desk-based. So there is a big churn now. And I think all across the world, people are also very worried about whether they will have jobs at the end of their education. So it's a difficult place to be. So one thing we have seen that has happened in tourism sector is that the number of, even if the business is open, the number of jobs that they have operated the business with have come down drastically. So we see that there are some big tour operators in Spain who have told me that the earlier division of work no longer exists. So people who sit in the office and do the bookings are also now going out and conducting tours outside. And I'd been to a hotel sometime when they first restarted in the Canary Islands, and it's a 150 room hotel, and they used to operate with about 100 staff, and now they have actually operating it with 50 staff. So essentially, what this means is that all of them are doing double the work. The hotel cannot have a full retinue of staff because you cannot operate the hotel or the restaurant to full capacity as it was before, and therefore they have to drop it. So I have seen the barman during the evening hours, he's operating the bar, but the rest of the time he's making the children play and sort of doing some of those activities. So essentially, the name of the game has become multitasking. So I think the most important thing for you to get a job and to retain the job is your ability to be flexible, to multitask, to go beyond what you understand is your job. And I think the biggest asset that you can have now is to have a can-do attitude. But this is mostly when the pressure is on. But I think in about a year or two, the pressure will ease subsequently and jobs will be out. And we've seen Dr. Bose speak about how the financial markets are reacting. There are people who say it's essentially cheap capital, which is chasing few IPOs and putting money, but that's not entirely true, because the financial market is betting very strongly on the revival of tourism sector. And I think the job market will also come back to where they are. But the most important thing is we need to understand that the mindset has changed now. You cannot now say, I'm a front office person, I will only work the front office, or I'm, whatever is your designation. You will need to work beyond and contribute to the whole team as a whole.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I think, Atri, you have understood what sir was saying, that you have to be flexible. You cannot be firm that you are a front office manager, so you work only in the front office. You have to be a multitasking. You should be, flexible in your work, and then only that's the time now. But gradually, as he is rightly saying, that gradually things are going to change, and then that time you can, have the ball in your court. Right now, the ball will be with the owners, this thing. So you have to be multitasking and be flexible in your options. Thank you. Thank you, Atri. And I think we have had the questions. I don't think we have any other question. There's one, sir. There's one more, sir. Sir, Mr. Mukherjee, world is nothing but a book, and traveling is the best way to read the book. You see, you have to give us the question. You have written so many things. Statutes of the UNWTO adopted in this. Tourism effective way of strengthening tourism. JP Shaw, sir. Guiding support, inspiration is important part of my life. So, not for today, every day, WDD, happy. So, there's no questions. He's only giving us some good words about our event today. Thank you. Thank you, sir, Mr. Mukherjee, for your kind words. We will be taking on such type of initiatives and the webinars and seminars once the things become normal on behalf of the university. So that will be happening. So you can always be tuned with our university and with the travel tourism department for time to time to see what all is happening. And I think if there is no other question, Prem, is there any other question? Can you share the link for the...
No question.
No questions.
If any participants want to ask you anything directly to our panelists, then they can raise their
they can raise their hand if there is any participant who wanting to ask anything to our keynote speaker, Mr. Billa, if anybody wants to ask anything. Otherwise, we can sum it up. Professor Indril Mukherjee, sir, with your permission, can we sum up? And Professor Indril Mukherjee, sir?
I think you can sum up.
I think yes. Okay, then thank you, the participants, for giving your patient hearing and to this webinar. And we had the great pleasure on having Dr. Suman Billa, the Director of Technical Cooperation and Silk Route Development of UNWTO. He's based in Madrid now, and it was nice of him to join in our webinar at a short notice. And he has already given us a very in-depth information about how tourism is growing and how things are. We have to take up tourism very seriously because it's very important from the economic point of view for all the countries who are dependent on tourism, and India is no exception in that. And I also thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, for giving us an opportunity to organize this webinar on World Tourism Day. my colleague, Mr. Arni Bhaumik, my senior colleague, Professor Indrin Mukherjee, and Dr. Subarna Bose, who was having another, I think, assignment now at 4 p.m. Of his IIHM. This webinar, just to inform that it was in association, the Maulana Abul Kalam Azad University of Technology, along with the IIHM's association, we had organized this webinar on this World Tourism Day on 27 September 2021. And we look forward for another webinar or maybe seminar, live seminar, because the last 2 years we have had webinar. First year we had a seminar, but last 2 years because of this pandemic, we had this webinar. Hopefully, next World Tourism Day, we might be having live events, etc. Look forward to that. Things might improve. With these words, I thank also our technical team, Mr. Prem Kumar and all his colleagues for so effectively taking up this entire program. Prem, if you have any link to share for the participants, you can do that, and also for their e-certificate. Thank you so much, sir. We'll be going off the web. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sarani, and thank you, Professor Indrin Mukherjee.